Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be looking at the Aedra, the gods also known as the Divines. At first glance, when you put the Aedra next to the Daedric Princes, they seem a bit safe, maybe even a little boring. I mean, beauty, wisdom and mercy are great and all, but they don't sound as exciting as sex, lies and murder. The Daedric Princes are dangerous, volatile and alien. They inspire fear and fascination in equal measure. By comparison, the Divines can come across like a pantheon of overbearing parents. But while it's widespread, that view is far too simple. Today, I hope to dispel the myth of the Divines as tame or one-dimensional, and show that they are far more complex. And in the right circumstances, they can be every bit as awe-inspiring and terrifying as their counterparts in Oblivion. So what are the Aedra? How did they come to be? Why do mortals revere them? And are they truly worthy of the title of Divines? This video will seek to answer each of these fundamental questions, as well as examine each of the Divines in turn, considering their domains, cults, relics, and more. This is the complete guide to the Divines of the Elder Scrolls. But before we jump in, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. The gods of the algorithm are cruel and arbitrary, but such offerings can help to appease their wrath. It would be greatly appreciated and will help me to bring you more videos like this in the future. Thank you. In the beginning, there was only the void. Then, the first two beings came into existence, Anu and Padme, the embodiments of order and chaos, stasis and change. Here, in the beginning place, the push and pull between those two forces gave rise to the original spirits, the Aedra. The first and greatest among them was Akatosh, and with his birth, time was brought forth into the world. This helped the other spirits to take form, and soon they made the beginning place into a paradise. But one spirit was not content with this existence. His name was Lorcan, and he began to convince others to join him on a quest to create a new plane of reality. The elves remember him as a trickster who manipulated the gods and robbed them of their immortality. But mankind views him as their creator, liberator, and revered ancestor. In the Cyrodiilic myth, the Song of Shazar, Lorcan moved the spirits with the promise that in the new world they would have children of their own. This was a new thing that Shazar described to the gods, becoming mothers and fathers. But Shazar spoke beautifully to them and moved them beyond mystery and tears. Thus, the Aedra gave free birth to the world, the beasts and the beings, making these things from parts of themselves. This free birth was very painful, and afterwards the Aedra were no longer young and strong and powerful, as they had been from the beginning of days. Whatever Lorcan's motivations, he ultimately convinced the Aedra to pour their essence into this new creation, the mortal plane known as the Mundus. But this act would come at an immense cost. Those spirits who joined this effort became known as the Aedra, a word that means our ancestors. Others chose to flee, tearing holes in the celestial canopy to form the sun and the stars. The remaining Aedra gave of themselves so that mountains could rise, oceans can form, and mortal life could breathe. But in the process, they were diminished. The Aedra bound themselves to the world, losing much of their raw, untamed power. And soon they turned on Lorcan, blaming him for their loss. Akatosh called a great meeting of all the Aedra, crashing down on Tamriel in a long silver vessel. This became the Adamantine Tower, and it was the birthplace of the mortal plane as we know it. Here, in a convention that transcended time itself, the gods set out the laws upon which the world would function. Then, they called Lorcan before them for judgment. He was cast down, and his still beating heart was torn from his body. Then, the Aedra fled back into the realm of Aetherius, leaving the Mundus in the care of its new masters, the mortal races. Yet there were other spirits who chose not to take part in this creation. They mocked Lorcan and the Aedra and chose to create new worlds within themselves and of themselves. These beings became known as the Daedra, literally meaning not our ancestors, and their realms became the planes of Oblivion we know today. This divide, Aedra versus Daedra, is at the heart of how mortals understand the gods. To worship the Aedra is to venerate the ancestors, the beings who gave themselves to make life possible. To worship the Daedra is to look to outsiders, who often view mortals as playthings, tools, or mere curiosities. They did not sacrifice to build Mundus, and so they retained their power. They are free, unconstrained by the limitations imposed during the convention. To mortals, this often makes them seem stronger, stranger, and more terrifying than the Aedra. But it also means that the Aedra are unique. They are invested in the fate of Nirn in a way the Daedra can never be. They are not distant overlords looking down from alien realms. They are part of the world itself, its blood, its bones, its breath, and that makes them at once more limited and more integral. But this contrast is not as simple as good versus evil. In the Mundus, morality is murky, and the gods often reflect that murkiness. Yes, the Aedra made a great sacrifice, but their motives were not necessarily altruistic. For example, Arkay, the god of life and death, is revered as a guardian of the natural cycle. But his sphere is merciless. The grave waits for everyone, no matter how noble or innocent. Stendarr, the god of mercy, commands his followers to show compassion to the weak, while at the same time driving his vigilance to hunt down and slaughter heretics. Even Akatosh, the great dragon of time, has a darker aspect. The march of time is relentless. It flattens everything in its path. Mortals worship Akatosh as a beacon of order and stability, but the other side of the coin is inevitable decay and death. Ultimately, the Aedra are beyond all mortal conceptions of good or evil. They are more akin to the forces of nature or the laws of reality, ones that bring life and death in equal measure. The Aedra are not only defined by their actions, but by what the act of creation cost them. In shaping the Mundus, they bound themselves to its fundamental laws. This gave form and order to existence, but it also tethered the Aedra to stasis, to permanence. Where the Daedra embody chaos, change, and endless possibility, the Aedra embody continuity, limitation, and sacrifice. This binding makes them profoundly different from their cousins in Oblivion. The Aedra are sometimes called the mortal gods, or even the dead gods, for unlike the Daedra, they can be killed. They poured so much of themselves into the world that they became vulnerable, diminished. Some traditions even describe Mundus itself as their graveyard, a great tomb in which the Aedra are interned, their essence scattered across mountain and ocean, sea and sky. To the cynical, the divines are nothing more than spent ghosts, echoes of powers that once were. And yet there is a paradox here. For though they gave so much away, the Aedra retained a gift the Daedra do not possess, the ability to create anew. The Daedra can twist, mimic, and reshape, but they cannot bring something wholly original into existence. The Aedra, bound as they are, retain that spark of true creation. Perhaps this is why mortals revere them. They are not only ancestors, but progenitors, the source of life itself. Some accounts even suggest that creation, for all its costs, raised the Aedra to new heights. Vivek once said that not all of those who became the divines were the mightiest of the Etharda in the beginning. But by creating the mortal world, they made themselves greater, rising to divinity through sacrifice and struggle. Most scholars believe the Aedra now reside in Aetherius, the realm of pure magic, the source of the light of the stars. The sun itself is said to be a great hole torn in the firmament by Magnus, a blazing conduit between Mundus and Aetherius. Through that radiant breach flows the divine light of the Aedra that still touches Nirn. It is through this channel that the blessings of the gods continue to reach the mortal world. The faithful believe their souls will pass to Aetherius after death, to live forever among their gods and ancestors. Interpretations of the afterlife differ across cultures, from the southern guard of the Nords to the far shores of the Red Guards. But all of those who worship the Aedra hope to lead lives worthy of being rewarded with a place in Aetherius. Like the Daedric Princes, each of the divines has their own plane of existence. But the domains of the Aedra are more than just planes of Aetherius, they also manifest on the mortal plane. And those who wish to gaze upon them need only look up at the planets in the night sky. Each planet is not only named for a god, it is that god, infinite in mass and scope, with its spherical appearance being nothing more than a trick of mortal perception. If we were to see them as they really are, our minds would not even be able to comprehend them. In times past, the Imperials and the Altmer have used elaborate orreries to track the motion of these heavenly bodies, aligning their worship with the intricate dance of the cosmos. Now, before we go deeper into the individual divines, we need to discuss what we mean when we use that word. The Aedra appear in some form in nearly every culture across Tamriel, but how many there are, which ones are honoured, how they're understood, and what place they hold in society varies greatly between cultures. It's important to note that not all cultures recognise the same Aedra as their gods. For example, Trinimac is central to the Elven Pantheon, but largely ignored by human cultures. And likewise, the Altmer don't seem to recognise Kynareth or Dibella. Broadly speaking, the largest divide in Aedra worship is between Elvish and human cultures. The Elves believe they are the descendants of Ori-El, their version of Akatosh, and that the creation of the mortal plane robbed them of their immortality. But the humans of Tamriel claim descent from Lorcan, and believe that they were originally born on Nirn. Thus, the Elven and human races have traditionally viewed different Aedra as divines, although there is significant overlap, with gods such as Akatosh and Mara present in both pantheons. The 9 divines that we'll be focusing on today, the Imperial Pantheon, were not handed down from the stars fully formed. Instead, the Pantheon was established through an uneasy marriage between these two long-standing religious traditions and the will of one woman, Alessia, the first Empress of Cyrodiil. After leading a rebellion that overthrew the Ayleid overlords of Cyrodiil, Alessia found herself ruling over a fragile new order. Her people had lived for centuries under Elven dominion, and many had come to follow the Aldmer gods. But at the same time, their freedom had only been secured with the aid of Nordic armies, who followed their own proud and ancient pantheon. Alessia could not simply choose one faith over the other, or she risked upending the balance of power that kept her on the throne. So she chose a different path. She wove together elements of both traditions, blending common archetypes, the time dragon, the mother goddess, the lord of death, into a new pantheon, one that could stand as the spiritual foundation of her empire. In this way, Ori-El of the Aldmer became Akatosh of the Divines, the Nordic goddess Kyn became Kynareth, and gods such as Mara, Dibella, and Stendarr found new expression. It was through this great compromise that the pantheon of the 8 divines was born. Akatosh, Arkay, Dibella, Julianos, Kynareth, Mara, Stendarr, Zenithar. This new faith was solidified by a holy pact between Alessia and Akatosh himself. The time dragon appeared in a vision before the Empress, and Akatosh drew from his breast a burning handful of his heart's blood, and he gave it into Alessia's hand, saying, "This shall also be a token to you of our joined blood and pledged faith. So long as you and your descendants shall wear the Amulet of Kings, then shall this dragon fire burn, an eternal flame, as a sign to all men and gods of our faithfulness." The Alessian doctrine became the official religion of the First Empire, and from there spread outward, carried by imperial law, culture, and conquest. Other gods were still worshipped in local cults, of course, but the 8 divines became the dominant cult of Cyrodiil, and has been the most important religion in Tamriel ever since. And when Tiber Septim ascended to godhood in the Third Era, the 8 divines became 9. For the purposes of this video, we'll be focusing on the Imperial Pantheon, the gods that most people across the Empire recognise as the divines. Keep in mind though, that these are not the only Aedra worshipped, nor are they the only way of understanding the Aedra. The Divines we'll explore are one particular vision of the sacred, shaped by history, politics, and the power of faith. Now, let us consider each of them in turn. Akatosh. Akatosh is the chief god of the Divines, the firstborn, the god of time, and the father of dragons. His symbol is the dragon, and he has been known to appear with a great golden dragon as his avatar. To worship Akatosh is to revere order, authority, and inevitability. More than any other god, he is tied to the stability of the empire, standing as the bedrock of its laws and traditions. In the beginning, Akatosh was the first to stir from the primordial chaos of creation. With his awakening, time first sprang forth and began to flow. While the other spirits dreamed freely, Akatosh first bound them to the relentless progression of past, present, and future. Without him, Mundus might never have found form in the first place. It was Akatosh who sealed the covenant that held the empire together for millennia. He bestowed upon Alessia the Amulet of Kings as a symbol of their alliance. This red diamond bound the dragon god's blood to her descendants, ensuring that as long as they sat upon the ruby throne, the barriers between Oblivion and the mortal plane would hold firm. The covenant was not just a pact between god and mortal, but the only thing protecting Nirn from the Daedric legions of Oblivion. The covenant eventually came full circle at the end of the Oblivion crisis, when Martin Septim shattered the amulet, sacrificing himself to become an avatar of Akatosh, thus sealing the barriers between Nirn and Oblivion for good. Akatosh is a god of law and duty, and his teachings reflect those values. The faithful are taught to obey their emperor, for the empire and Akatosh are bound by blood. They are commanded to study these covenants, and to revere not only Akatosh, but all of the Divines, for he is not a jealous god. Duty is central to his worship. To neglect one's responsibilities is to sin against the dragon god. Finally, Akatosh demands obedience to the hierarchy of priests and saints, for order must be maintained both spiritually and physically. His clergy often stresses endurance through hardship, resilience in the face of despair, and the eternal legitimacy of law, all reflections of the timeless god they serve. The worship of Akatosh stretches across cultures and takes many forms. In Cyrodiil, his temples bless the rule of emperors and teach the people to see his hand in the rhythm of their lives. In Skyrim, old traditions pit Akatosh against the World Eater Alduin, the first of the dragons, in an eternal clash between preservation and destruction. The Khajiit know him as Alkosh, the dragon cat, whose tail spins out the threads of time itself. To the Altmer and Bosmer, he is Uri-El, chief of the gods and father of their people, while the Yakudans see him as Satakal, the devourer who endlessly swallows and renews the world. Even the Argonians whisper of a time spirit called Atakota, though they do not revere him as other cultures do. In the First Era, a cult known as the Alessian Order believed that Akatosh was the one true god, and that all other deities were simply aspects of him. Though the cult eventually fell into decline, the Temple of the One still stands strong as the centre of religion in Cyrodiil to this day. No matter his name or form, Akatosh is always seen as the great unifier of time, a divine constant that underpins mortal existence. In Cyrodiil, rites to Akatosh mark the turning of the year, and his priests remind the people that time heals all wounds, though never without leaving its scars. His followers adorn themselves with draconic imagery, and have even been known to forge living armour in honour of their patron. To worship Akatosh is to place faith not only in the divine, but in the idea that the long arc of history bends towards order, so long as the dragon god of time endures. But time does not fly straight like an arrow. Rather, it winds like a river. And sometimes that flow comes to a halt altogether. These events are known as dragon breaks, a metaphysical phenomenon when Akatosh loses control over the progression of time. There have been several notable dragon breaks in Tamriel's history, with the longest being the Middle Dawn, which lasted for over 1,000 years. Multiple, contradictory events often happened at the same time, like daughters giving birth to their own mothers. Some claim that Cyrodiil rose to become an empire spanning the stars, others that it was shrunk down inside an egg. Though in the end, the flow of time has always been restored, the dragon breaks are a sobering reminder that Akatosh is all that stands between Tamriel and an eternity of chaos. Arkay. Arkay is the god of the cycle of life and death, and is known by names such as the Lord of the Seasons and the Bringer of Life. He is often depicted as an elderly, bearded man, with his symbol of the wreath representing the circularity of life and death. In many cultures, he is associated with births, funerals, burials, and the changing of seasons. His priests are fierce opponents of necromancy and the undead in all their forms. Thus, necromancers view him as their arch-enemy and make efforts to undermine his worship wherever they can. Arkay's blessing prevents the souls of mortals from being used without their consent. Bodies buried under the rituals of Arkay's law are protected from being reanimated by necromancers. His association with mortals and his efforts to protect their souls have led to him being described as the mortals' god. But he is feared as well as loved. Some believe that natural disasters such as plagues and famines are caused by Arkay as part of his efforts to ensure the natural rhythms of life and death. Though a member of the Imperial Pantheon, Arkay is worshipped across all cultures. Perhaps none revere him more than the Red Guards, who share his disdain for necromancy. The Red Guards view him as a shepherd of souls, who watches over mortal lives and guides them to the afterlife after death. The ancient Nords knew him as Orki, a testing god who contained elements of both Arkay and Malakath. He was often depicted as a snake and was said to start quarrels wherever he went. Some myths blame him for the shorter lifespan of men, and in one legend he even shrank down all the Nords to become children. But today, the Nords of Skyrim venerate Arkay as part of the Imperial Pantheon, and his shrines can be found in halls of the dead across the province. Arkay also holds an important place in Breton culture. The Bretons believe that Arkay was once a mortal shopkeeper who found an ancient tome written in a strange language, and spent years trying to uncover its secrets. But he became consumed by this quest, and began to withdraw from everyone around him. Finally, Arkay discovered the book contained the secrets of life and death, but by the time he realized this, he was on the brink of death himself. So he prayed to Mara for deliverance, and she appeared before him with the following words: "Your choice is to either accept the death that is so close, or to become a god with us. But a god is not an easy nor pleasant thing to be. As the god of death and birth, you will spend eternity making sure that deaths and births stay in proper balance in the physical world. And, in spite of what you believe you understand, you will always agonize over whether your decisions are truly correct." Arkay reluctantly chose to accept this burden, giving up his mortality to become the god of birth and death. Arkay is credited with creating the Sword of the Crusader, one of the divine relics wielded by Pellinal Whitestrake in his crusade against the Aelids. It's a powerful weapon that smites foes with sacred flame and drains their magicka. Sir Beric Flindrel, one of the original Knights of the Nine, stole the sword and brought it to the War of the Red Diamond in the Third Era. Sir Beric was later buried with the sword, but the evil which overtook him in life endured after death, and he soon rose as an undead wraith, corrupting the holy relic. Centuries later, the hero of Kvatch slew Beric's wraith and recovered the blade, taking it back to the Chapel of Arkay so it could be reconsecrated once more. Dibella. Dibella is known as the goddess of beauty, but her appeal is more than skin deep. She is also the patron of love, art, and music. She is depicted as a woman of great beauty, and her symbol is a white flower. She commands her followers to open their hearts to the noble secrets of art and love, treasure the gifts of friendship, and seek joy and inspiration in the mysteries of love. There are many salacious rumours about the worshippers of Dibella, and though a few of them have some basis in fact, those who believe she is a goddess of debauchery are sorely mistaken. She is highly respected in the Imperial heartland, where she has more than a dozen cults in her honour. Her priestesses travel throughout the province, healing the sick and helping the needy wherever they find them. The ancient Nords revered her as the Mother Moth, believing her to be a goddess of light and a wife of Shor. Today, shrines in her honour can be seen throughout Skyrim, and even the Daedra worshipping Reachmen have been known to honour the goddess of beauty. Her temples are known as Houses of Dibella, and each is led by a Sibyl, a priestess who is said to be chosen through divine revelation by the goddess herself. Some Dibellan cults focus on women, others on art or aesthetics, and some on erotic instruction. These latter practices have led some to look down on Dibella as a lustful deity. It is said that some priestesses of Dibella will wear a mask of the goddess and engage in anonymous erotic acts with their worshippers. But for the faithful of Dibella, there is no shame in love. She does not care how many lovers her followers may take, she only cares for the essence of their love. As a Sibyl of Dibella once said, "It matters not who plants a flower. If the shoot is nurtured with love, will not the flower be beautiful?" Still, practitioners of the Dibellan arts are known to make war as well as love. Her cults have been known to produce powerful warriors, such as the Order of the Lily, a militant order which protects her temples. It is even said that two of Dibella's Vestals, Shoni Et and Sed Yenna, were the wives of Remen Cyrodiil, the founder of the Second Empire. They wielded the Dibellan arts as weapons of war, with Shoni Et whistling her spit like a carousel of blades, while Sed Yenna cracked the helms of her foes between her knees. It goes to show that beneath the beauty on the surface, Dibella also has her thorns. Dibella is credited with creating the Helm of the Crusader, the iconic helmet worn by Pelennor Whitestrake. The goddess's blessing fortifies the wearer's restoration abilities, and blesses them with the gift of charm and charisma. It is also said that the goddess created the brush of true paint from strands of her own hair. This brush allows the wielder to enter a painting and create a new world just by imagining it. But the user should be warned to take great care, lest their imagination get the better of them. Julianos. Julianos is the god of wisdom and logic, and his domain encompasses literature, lore, history, and magic. His followers include scholars and mages from all cultures who pray to Julianos for knowledge and the wisdom to wield it. He is often depicted as a wise, elderly figure, and his symbol is the golden triangle. Julianos' commandments are simple. Know the truth, observe the law, when in doubt, seek wisdom from the wise. Temples dedicated in his honour are known as schools of Julianos, and their missions are to preserve knowledge and to spread literacy and education throughout Tamriel. Those who pray at his shrines will receive blessings to enhance their intelligence and magical abilities. Several monastic orders dedicated to Julianos were established by Tiber Septim, and along with the Moth Priests, they are charged with safeguarding the Elder Scrolls themselves. The worship of Julianos is strongest among the Imperials and the Bretons. A great chapel dedicated to him can be found in the city of Skingrad, and he is hailed as the city's patron god. In ancient times, the Nords worshipped him as Junal the Rune God, the lord of knowledge and wisdom, the creator of language and mathematics. He was also a patron of the clever men, the powerful ancient mages of the Nords. But eventually, Junal fell out of favour in Skyrim, before being incorporated into the Imperial Pantheon as Julianos, and few Nords today remember him by his old name. The most renowned of all the artifacts of Julianos is the Shield of the Crusader, forged to imitate the shape of the Amulet of Kings. The shield protects its wielder against magical attacks, and sometimes even allows them to reflect spells against the attacker. When the Order of the Knights of the Nine fell apart, Sir Henrik took the shield and set out on his own. To safeguard the relic, he hid it behind a series of puzzles and traps within Fort Bulwark, where it was eventually recovered by the hero of Kvatch late in the Third Era. Kynareth. If you feel that nature brings you closer to the divine, then you might consider following Kynareth, the goddess of the winds, the seas, and the forests. She appears in many guises, and her symbol is a white bird in flight. In some traditions, she was the first to support Lorkhan's plan to create the mortal world, and found the space for its creation in the void. Some believe she was the wife of Lorkhan, and her tears upon his death caused the first drops of rain to fall upon the world. Kynareth's commands to her faithful are simple: use nature's gifts wisely, respect her power, and fear her fury. As a goddess of nature, she is worshipped across Tamriel, from the forests of Cyrodiil to the deserts of elsewhere. The Imperials revere her as the mother of the demigod Morrowhouse, the bull-headed warrior who helped Alessia overthrow the Ayleids and form the first empire of man. Though she is held in reverence, she has no great chapel in the cities of Cyrodiil. Her followers do not believe in building over nature, and so instead dedicate shrines to her out in the wilds. Kynareth is also widely revered in High Rock, hailed as the patron god of Daggerfall. The Nords of Skyrim know her as Kyne, and consider her the chief deity in their pantheon. She was the wife of Shor, and the first to join him in his endeavour to create the mortal world. She breathed life into the first Nords at the throat of the world, and taught them how to wield the Thu'um and its words of power. The Nords also call her the Kiss at the End, for she shepherds souls on their way to Sovngarde, and she is revered as a warrior goddess who grants courage and strength. Though many of the old Nordic gods have been forgotten, the children of the sky still revere Kyne, and regard her imperial iteration as but a pale shadow. The Khajiit of elsewhere know her as Kynareth, god of winds, gatherer of waters, and the elder spirit of the heavens. In the afterlife, Kynareth guides the souls of Khajiit to the sands behind the stars. It is believed she brought the first sounds to Nirn, and so the Khajiit honour her with music, song, and storytelling. It has been prophesied that at the end of time, she will let out a clarion call to summon forth the spirits of all Khajiit in a great battle to defend creation. Several powerful artifacts are associated with the goddess of nature. The Lord's Mail was an almost impenetrable cuirass first worn by the demigod Morrowhouse in his battles against the Ayleids. It has been known to enable the wearer to regenerate health, resist magic, and become resistant to poison. She also created the Boots of the Crusader, worn by Pelennor Whitestrake, which prevent all creatures of nature from attacking the wearer. Any who wished to retrieve the boots had to visit the Grove of Trials and endure the assault of the Forest Guardians without striking back, proving their devotion to the harmony of nature. Mara. Hey, is that an amulet of Mara? If you've ever tried that line on a prospective partner, you're a braver soul than I. Anyway, Mara is known as the Divine Mother and is the goddess of love, fertility, and agriculture. She appears as a maternal figure, and her symbol is a tied knot, representing the bonds of love. Whereas Dibella is seen as the goddess of romantic and sexual love, Mara's domain encompasses marital vows, familial bonds, and compassion for others. Her worship is rooted in a simple but profound truth. Mara gave life to mortals so that they might love, and through love, glimpse the true nature of divinity. Her priests teach that love is nourishment, that it sustains mortals as surely as bread or water. In her temples, followers are commanded to live peacefully, honour their parents, and preserve the sanctity of home and family. The warmth of Mara is said to shape the very destiny of mortals, her benevolence eternal, never forsaking those who offer love in her name. For this reason, her clergy often see themselves not only as keepers of doctrine, but as guides, helping wayward souls rediscover compassion where it has withered. It is Mara who blesses the union of marriage, a bond sanctified at her shrines and temples throughout Tamriel. The spark of union, she teaches, comes not from beauty or station, but from within, where two souls recognize each other as one. To marry beneath her gaze is to bind lives together in love, and Mara places no restrictions on who may do so. All mortals, regardless of race or gender, may unite their souls in her holy covenant. The amulet of Mara is the most visible symbol of this bond, worn not only as a token of devotion, but as a declaration of readiness to wed. Her priesthood is vigilant in preserving the sacred trust and are intolerant of intolerance itself, quick to intercede when love is threatened by cruelty or prejudice. In this way, Mara is not only a goddess of love, but also a goddess of peace, and mortals can honour her by striving to live in harmony with those around them. Stendarr. Stendarr is heralded as the god of mercy, charity, and justice. He is the patron of knights, magistrates, and the Imperial Legion, and is hailed as the steadfast defender of mankind. He is often depicted as a bearded man, and his symbol is a flowing chalice or horn. He commands his followers to be kind and generous to the people of Tamriel, but he is also a fierce enemy of the four abominations: Daedra, the undead, vampires, and lycanthropes. His followers believe that abominations are the foes of all mortal kind, and must be cleansed from the face of Nirn with blood and flame. Stendarr is a key figure in the Cyrodiilic pantheon. Though primarily a god of men, his tenets of compassion and mercy speak to all cultures, and he vows to defend mortals of all origins. Even elves of Somerset and Morrowind, as well as Khajiit elsewhere, have been known to devote themselves to his worship. The ancient Nords worshipped him as Stoon, the shield thane of Shor, and god of ransom and justice. He taught the early Nords how to take prisoners in war, and the value of keeping them alive. When Alessia overthrew the Aelids, Stoon was adopted into the new Imperial pantheon as Stendarr. Though many Nords still call the divines by their old Nordic names, most now recognise Stendarr by his Imperial moniker. Stendarr's priests urge worshippers to follow their god's tenets, providing aid to those who need it, helping the sick and infirm, and resisting the hoarding of wealth and physical indulgences. He offers mercy to all mortals, whether they worship him or not, and has been known to accept the penitent no matter their past sins. Faithful who pray at the shrines of Stendarr may find their afflictions miraculously healed, and his priests are experts in restoration magic. Still, he draws the line when it comes to abomination. Crusaders and Templars in the service of Stendarr vow to cleanse abominations wherever they find them. After the Oblivion crisis, the Vigil of Stendarr was founded with the goal of rooting out Daedra worship. The Vigil has been known to use extreme measures in the pursuit of their crusade, even resorting to torture. For some, the only mercy Stendarr will grant is a swift death. Several powerful artifacts are associated with Stendarr. The Hammer of Stendarr was said to have been wielded by the god himself, and is so heavy that only the very strongest of mortals will be able to even lift it. He was also the creator of the Gauntlets of the Crusader, worn by Pelennor Whitestrake, which fortify the user's restoration abilities and protect them against disease. In the Third Era, Sir Casimir of the Knights of the Nine recovered the gauntlets and wore them into battle during the War of the Red Diamond. He returned from the war haunted, and one day he lashed out and struck a beggar with the gauntlets, killing him. Stendarr then cursed the gauntlets, causing them to fall from Casimir's hands and crash to the floor, where even the strongest man was unable to move them. For centuries, they lay stuck to the floor of Stendarr's great chapel in Kol, a reminder that the god of mercy has no clemency for wickedness. Zenithar. Zenithar is the god of work and commerce, and the patron of merchants, traders, and craftsmen. His symbols are the anvil and the blue star, and he is often depicted as a bearded figure. His priests teach that the path to prosperity is hard work and honest profit, not theft, deception, or bloodshed. But they also teach that the rewards of work are not just physical, but spiritual. Remember that Zenithar also teaches us to be wise in our spending, to never steal from others. The rewards he guides us to are not material. No, his rewards are the rewards of the spirit. By engaging in a ritual of production, whether you're a smith hammering out swords or a farmer tending and harvesting crops, you honor Zenithar. By participating in creation, your actions are blessed. The reward that Zenithar wishes for us to discover is in the work itself, hidden in the very act of making. Temples devoted to Zenithar are known as resolutions and are protected by the militant order known as the Knights of Iron. The faithful offer coins at his shrines or burn crops in his honor in the hopes that he will bless them with prosperity. His followers keep small shrines in the shape of anvils in their homes, and are known to carry coins with blue stars in their purses for good luck. He is often associated with the Bosmer god Zen, and many believe that the two are one and the same. For the Bosmer, Zen is the god of toil and agriculture, but he also has a darker side as a god of vengeance. Though Zenithar is known as a peaceful deity, he has also been acknowledged as a patron saint of mercenaries. Along with his knights, they worship him as a warrior god. This side of Zenithar is reflected in his artifacts. The Mace of the Crusader is his most renowned relic. It was wielded in battle by Pellinal himself, who used it to crush the skulls of the Ayleid kings. Its strikes burn the foe with holy flame and cause the undead to flee in terror. When Pellinal was slain, the mace was brought to Leyawiin, where it was hidden beneath the great chapel of Zenithar. To retrieve the relic, the faithful had to enter a vision where the mace lay across a great chasm. Only by walking in faith could a pilgrim cross the void and retrieve the sacred artifact. For centuries, it was assumed that there were only 8 divines, immutable in number. But in the late Second Era, all that would change with the birth of one man, whose deeds would not just reshape the world, but the very heavens. His early life was shrouded in mystery. Some say that he was born in Atmora under the name Talos, others that he was born in High Rock with the name Hjalti. Whatever his origins, he quickly rose to power as a general in the service of King Cúlacáin of Falkreath, winning his first battle against the Reachmen at the age of 20. After the assassination of Cúlacáin, Talos assumed command and soon conquered Cyrodiil, proclaiming himself emperor under a new name, Tiber Septim. All of Tamriel would come to kneel before his might, and after uniting the continent, the new emperor proclaimed the start of the Third Era. Under his rule, Tamriel entered a golden age, and he is considered by many to be the greatest emperor in its history. His ascension to godhood is shrouded in myth. The traditional story is that after he passed away on his deathbed at the age of 108, his spirit ascended to Aetherius. In recognition of his immense accomplishments, Talos was granted a place among the divines, the only mortal ever to receive this honour. But there are other, darker rumours about his ascent. There are those who believe that he became a god by absorbing the souls of dragons, leaving them all but extinct in Tamriel. Others whisper that Talos was not one man, but 3. The general, Hjalti Earlybeard, the battle mage, Zurin Arctus, and the Ash King, Ismir Wolfhearth, who combined to form the oversoul known as Talos. Yet these theories are still speculation and considered dangerous heresies by the faithful of the Empire, and the true manner of Talos' ascent remains a mystery. In the Third Empire, Talos was revered as the god of might and the divine protector of men. Shrines were raised in his honour across Cyrodiil, Skyrim, and beyond. He became the patron of conquest and governance. For the Nords, he was the ultimate expression of the hero god Ysmir. For the Imperials, he was the divine embodiment of their greatest emperor. And for all mankind, he was proof that mortality could ascend to divinity. Cults devoted to Talos thrived during this time, both sanctioned and underground. His worshippers sought his blessing before battle, his guidance in politics, and his protection in the struggles of everyday life. One of his cults, the Red Templars, were even rumoured to drink his blood to gain the power of the voice in battle. Across the Empire, shrines of Talos promise the gifts of strength, courage, and the will to overcome any foe. And unlike the more abstract divines, Talos had the advantage of being familiar, even relatable. He was a god who had once been a man, and so his life and deeds provided a model for mortals to follow. But Talos' place among the gods has not been without controversy. To the elves, his apotheosis was an affront. How could a mortal, and worse a man, claim a place among the Aedra, those timeless gods who shaped the world? To them, Talos was no deity, but a usurper, his worship a heresy that mocked the divine order. For centuries, this schism would smoulder under the surface until it erupted out in the open during the Great War. When the ailing empire clashed with the rising Aldmeri dominion in the Fourth Era, the Thalmor demanded an unthinkable concession: the outlawing of Talos worship. The White Gold Concordat, signed after the war ground to a stalemate, forbade the veneration of the Ninth Divine across the Empire. Shrines of Talos were desecrated, priests were driven underground, and open worship became a crime. For the Thalmor, stamping out Talos worship was not only political, but existential. The very idea of his godhood threatened their vision of Elven supremacy. Yet banning a god's worship cannot simply erase them. In Skyrim especially, devotion to Talos endured in secret. His followers whispered prayers in clandestine shrines, passed down relics in secret, and kept alive the conviction that the Ninth Divine had not abandoned them. For many Nords, the ban on Talos was an act of tyranny, a wound to their very identity. His name became a rallying cry for rebellion, fueling the fires of the Stormcloak uprising. And his name continues to be invoked in the ongoing struggle against the Aldmeri dominion. We've spoken at length about the Nine Divines, but there is one more name that echoes through the myths of Tamriel, a lingering presence, conspicuous in its absence, yet never truly gone. The Divines are whole only in appearance, for their ranks conceal a wound, a gap where the missing god should be. Lorkhan, Shor, Shazar, he goes by many names, but the mortal world owes its existence to him. Yet in the pantheon of gods, he is too easily forgotten. We already touched on Lorkhan's apparent death. His heart was ripped from his chest and flung across the seas by Akatosh. His sundered corpse, some say, became the moons, his blood gushing into the very oceans. And some whisper that ever since, his disembodied spirit has wandered Nirn, never allowed to rest. Still, there are whispers that he did not truly die. When his heart was torn from his body, it mocked the Aedra. This heart is the heart of the world, for one was made to satisfy the other. And though it was buried deep beneath Red Mountain, it never stopped beating, even when separated from its host. Many think that the spirit of Lorkhan still walks Nirn unseen, and some believe that his spirit periodically returns to incarnate in mortal form, an idea which forms the myth of the Shezareen. The Shezareen has been said to appear throughout history to defend mankind. Few can agree on who, if any, can qualify as the Shezareen, but many believe the Divine Crusader, Pelinal Whitestrake, to be an avatar of the missing god. It was said that beneath his armour was a chest that gaped open to show no heart, only a red rage-shaped diamond fashion, singing like a mindless dragon. Upon seeing him, the Nords believed that he was sure reborn, but he spat at their feet for profaning that name. Various nameless heroes throughout history have been theorized to be Shezareens, from the hero of Kvatch to even the last Dragonborn. But I would argue that there is one figure who mirrors the missing god more than any other. We have already considered the mystery of Tiber Septim's ascent to godhood, and it seems clear that the explanation of how he actually rose to the heavens remains lacking. So instead, I would like to discuss another theory, that there were always 9 divines, not 8. That Talos was not a new god at all, but simply a result of Tiber Septim mantling Lorkhan to take the missing god's place among the divines. Mantling is one of the 6 walking ways, the methods by which a mortal may ascend to godhood. It is when a mortal walks so closely in the footsteps of a god that the two become one and the same. If we look at the stories of Talos and Lorkhan, we will see so many similarities that the two will begin to blur into one. Both were mighty warriors, champions of mankind who warred against the elves. Lorkhan created a new world in the void, while Talos established a new order on Tamriel. And upon the physical death of Talos, the sky poured rain for 2 weeks, mimicking how Kain's tears became the first rains after the death of Lorkhan. By following in the footsteps of Lorkhan, Talos may have filled the void left by the missing god, rising as the 9th divine and making the Pantheon whole again. Whether Talos truly is Lorcan reborn, or simply a man who achieved divinity through his deeds, the result is the same. The Divines were incomplete without the rebel spirit who defied the others to gift mortals their world. And so, with the ascension of Talos, that absence may have finally been healed. Now, in the Fourth Era, Tamriel is in a state of spiritual conflict that's almost unprecedented. The Aldmeri Dominion strives to stamp out Talos worship, the Empire reluctantly enforces its prohibition, and the Stormcloaks rally around their god hero. It seems inevitable that soon, Tamriel will be engulfed in a war that will shake it to its very foundations. But as always, the Divines will not take sides. And perhaps they never have. For what are the Divines, if not reminders that the line between mortal and god is thinner than we imagine? The Aedra gave of themselves so completely that they became the world, yet their names live on in the hearts of mortals. Lorcan was slain, and yet his heart kept beating. And Talos, born a mortal man, took up his mantle to rise into the heavens. This is one of the great themes of the Elder Scrolls, that mortality and divinity are not opposites, but reflections of one another. Mortals strive, suffer, and sacrifice, and in doing so, they brush against the divine. And gods give, bleed, and fall, and in doing so, they become closer to the mortal. The Shezareen returns again and again, a god guised in mortal flesh, until at last he becomes the bridge that closes the gap between heaven and earth. The Divines remind us that gods are not perfect, but mirrors of ourselves, our kindness, our cruelty, our contradiction. And in that truth lies something profound. Perhaps what makes them worthy of worship is not that they are so different to us, but that they are so similar. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, you might also enjoy the similar guide I did for the Daedric Princes. And please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It really helps to appease the gods of the algorithm. And if you really like the content, you might be interested in becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. But anyway, I've rambled on enough for today. So until next time, take care.